Hello, I'm so glad that you've come this afternoon to our home with David and I. And I'm really thrilled that you're interested in adoption because we need you. We need you, we need you, we need you. Last year, documented over 700 calls, emails, or texts about children in peril that needed homes. These are domestic and international, from babies about to be born, babies about to be aborted, if they can't find a family, to children of all ages, sibling groups, everything. They're out there. I once had a man tell me, "Oh, why are you doing this? There's no children out there that need homes." David had to hold me back, didn't you?
Man nearly lost his life.
Because, if you don't know about something, then you just believe it doesn't exist. And so many of our families, as they start this journey that we pray you're going to be starting on too, we start sending you what we call intakes, which is information about mothers who are about to have a child or children that are already here and what their needs are. The most I've ever gotten in one day is 18. These are 18 different children. And we have literally had families who have dropped out of the program before they even got their home study because reading the intakes were too difficult for them. That was very sad to me on many different levels. Yes, it's hard to read the situations that these children are in and the need that is so great, but that I hope would turn your heart to be a warrior, to want to go and help these children, not to run away from them. And we're here and we're supportive of you and we're so excited that you're here. And we want to just tell you a few stories about adoption.
Yeah, most of these workshops, there's two things we hope to do. One is to help you find your why. Why should you go down this journey of giving a child a home? And then once you find that place, once you find that motivation both within yourself and within God's Word, then we want to tell you how do you do that. Right. So it's the why and the how to begin your adoption journey and being part of God's family, part of His body, so that He's working through you to care for the fatherless.
It's very simple. I know if you go online and you look about adoption, there's just a million questions and a million things that you have to do, but we've boiled it all down to 3 simple steps. And you're going to do these 3 steps all at the same time, so you're going to finish at the same time. And it's not that hard. The first one that you're going to do is to start your home study. And a home study is a punch list. It's nothing hard. I have seen women go on Facebook and say, "Oh, we're 2 years in trying to get our home study done, and it's so hard." And then everybody piles on and says, "Oh, I don't know why the government makes you do this, and you're a good family, and blah, 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 blah." And I want to say, it's taking 2 years because she's lazy. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. It's a punch list. You have to get an FBI background check. Great. We want to make sure that no pedophiles adopt. This is a good thing. We want to have their fingerprints, medicals. It's very easy. They want information and document that you are employed, so they want the last 2 years' tax returns. It's just simple information, reference letters, documentation from the person that employs you. Well, you slide that over to an application to Sacred Selections. First thing, we want to make sure that you can adopt. So we require a valid home study within your state. It's not hard to get. If you want to know, we've got sources in all the states in the U.S., and you message us privately or call me at 916-770-0336 or info, at sacredselections.org. O-R-G. So as you're doing your home study, you can start working on your Sacred Selections application because we pretty much ask a lot of the same things as your home study. Then at the same time, you will put together a profile. Now we have specially trained people who know how to put a profile together, and a profile is basically a picture book, life book about you. And there are certain do's and don'ts, things you should do, you shouldn't put in a profile, like your wedding pictures. Don't put your wedding pictures. I know you looked beautiful in your wedding picture, But think about it. Most of the women who are choosing adoption have been abandoned and abused by men, and you haven't. And not only that, you've got a man who stands beside you, who's married you, who's honored you, who loves you, but you got to be Cinderella for the day. That's just like rubbing it in her face. So there are certain things about a profile that you should and should not put in, and we'll help you with that. There's also certain pictures that we want. Everybody smiling. The most important person in a profile is the man. And there we go back again to the women have been abandoned and abused by men. So if a man tries to look all serious, that equates as mean, and that equates as he's going to beat my child. So we want to talk about those and how this is something that you've got to be sensitive to. And I know sometimes we have families who do a really cool book and they'll say, but all my family loved it and they thought it was great. And I go, great, but your family's not choosing you to raise their child. So it's a different psychology. So those three things. Once you have that and you've been approved by Sacred Selections, then when we get a call and we send you information about it, and if you so choose to have your profile shown, if you're chosen, you're going down this road close to adoption. Last year we did the stats from when your home study was completed, everything was completed, you were authorized a bona fide Sacred Selections family, to you having a baby in your arms was the average of 5 to 6 months. Now, the national average is 2 to 3 years. Why can we do that? Why does Sacred Selections do this? And let's back up and let's be really clear. We are not an adoption agency. We are not a facilitator. We don't do anything like that. We do not take money. Do you take money for this?
Now, what has really kind of emerged out of the last 12 years, and we didn't really plan this, it's just something that we began to realize, is when an adoption agency or an adoption attorney calls Dana and lets us know that there's a mother who wants to place her child, there's two things that they know are already in place for the birth mother and for their agency. And number one, there's a really good home study approved family. And number two, all the financing's in place.
Yeah.
So it's really one phone call and the solution is there. So, and that's because we're not competing. We're not a competing attorney. We're not a competing agency. We are a resource for home study approved families and for all the financing that needs to make that adoption happen. So that's why we do, our placement rate is about 1 every 5 months, because we're pulling from resources, agencies, and attorneys all over the country.
And once they work with us, they love our families. When I take you on, I always say, okay, now I've become your adoption mama, which means that I can spank you. And I've had to spank several of our Sacred Selections families. And you just go online and say, who's been spanked by Dana? They'll step forward. But,
Even my own kids.
Yeah. But here's the thing. An adoption is a very emotional, action-packed process to go through, and everybody has heightened emotions. And we've gone through those rapids, if you will, many times, and we'll tell you, keep your life vest on, stay in the boat, sit down, don't stand up. Go here, do this, say this, bring flowers, go get Starbucks, whatever. And social workers and hospitals love to work with us. Did you know there's even hospitals in the United States that don't allow adoptions in them because they've had knives be thrown, or knives be drawn on one another, and guns and fist fights? Our families don't do that. So most adoptions, people do 1 or 2 or 3. With Sacred Selections, an agency or an attorney or hospitals or nurses or social workers know if they call us, we'll have families ready to go. Even in the middle of the night. And we've had many a call where we've gotten a call in the middle of the night and say, the state is coming to get the child in the morning, but the mother will choose adoption. Do you have a family that will fly to Connecticut, to Los Angeles, to Texas? And they do, and they will, because they go in faith that they can save a child. David calls them.
We call them our SEAL Team 6. These are the people that get the call in the middle of the night. They don't know where they're going. They don't know how this is all going to work out. They just know one thing, that there's a child that needs to be saved, and they have a here am I, send me attitude, and so they go.
And they do. And it's amazing every time. And David always like rolls over at 2 o'clock in the morning and goes, I can't believe you got those people to get up. But they do, and now they have beautiful children in their arms. Recently, we had a situation where a baby was being born that we didn't know anything about, and we needed to get a family there quickly. And the potential adoptive mother, I said, it's looking like you guys are going to need to get in a car and start driving now. And her husband had gone to work in the morning, didn't know anything about it. She has a military background, and she was calling him, and he wasn't answering the phone. And so she sent him a simple text, alert, alert. This is not a drill. Answer the phone. And he did. And she said, what's up? And she said, your son's being born right now. Let's get in the car and go. So those situations happen because the attorneys, the agencies, the social workers have worked with us before, and they know that our families will answer the call. And they're not looking for in adoption, it's a joke that a lot of people are looking for a designer baby. And, must be this, must be that, where our families, we've helped children born without kidneys, heart problems, Treacher's-Collins syndrome, deaf, blind. The families that adopt these children are just angels, angels. And we love them dearly. And we have the word out that our families will answer any call to help a child. And that's wonderful to hear when you're in the adoption arena. People call, and it'll be a cold call, and they'll go, I hear you're the people who help any child. And I go, good, glad we have that reputation. And they'll say, but I bet you won't help this child. And I say, well, let's see. And God always supplies for us the family who will help the children of special needs. So when people say to us, why would you help a child with special needs? And I said, oh, baby, those are my favorite, because we're all a child of God. God loved me, and I'm certainly not perfect. So why shouldn't Christians love all the children of the world, no matter their color, no matter their physical ability or inability? So think about those on your adoption journey. So once you get together and you decide you want to be shown, and a birth mother chooses you too, then that's called a match, and then we'll walk together and write it out. Now, another really fun part of adoption is the people you get to meet, people you would have never had in your life, and this is what many of our families tell us is the most exciting part, right, David?
Yeah, number one, you'll find that your adoption journey will become a sentinel event in your life. It will be a touchstone in your family's history that no one will ever forget. And the frustrations, the challenges, the joy are all part of that story. I think a lot about the many times that the disciples asked Jesus who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom. And almost every answer that he gave, his answer involved a child. And one of my favorite ones was the story I think it's recorded in Matthew and Luke, where the disciples were on the road to Capernaum, and they're arguing among themselves about who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom. And I always imagine Jesus, listening to his disciples argue, and he's rolling his eyes and thinking, again with the greatest. And when they get to Capernaum, he decides to make this a teaching opportunity. So he wanted to tell the disciples that if you're going to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, there's two things you need to understand. First, you'll be the last of all and the servant of all. But to demonstrate what it means to be last and to serve, he takes a little child. And I imagine him putting his hands on this little child's shoulders and says, whoever receives a child like this in my name receives me. So if you want to understand about what it is to be the greatest in the kingdom, it's about putting yourself last and about serving. And if you want to know what that means, it's like taking care of a little child. At one workshop that we did, this was a few years ago, there were probably 5 or 6 couples in there. And I like to talk to the dads specifically about finding their why. And I always tell people that the real grace of adoption, which I think adoption is one of the greatest acts of grace that we can, of self-sacrifice that we can give, maybe short of laying our lives down for someone. Because adoption is really grace, and it's a daily sacrifice, because you're bringing someone who is not your own, you're bringing them into your home, and you're calling them son or calling them daughter, and you're serving them every day. In Matthew 25, at the judgment scene, Jesus is separating the sheep and the goats. And the criteria that he used to make that decision, that determination, was based on, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you cared for me. I was a stranger and you took me in. And I was in prison and you visited me. And it occurred to me one day that when you adopt a child, you do all those things. And we even have a picture that was taken about 3 years ago. It's a beautiful picture of a family who, for the first time, held their newborn baby boy. And Dana showed me this picture. And when she showed it to me, I said, that's Matthew 25. Because the picture was taken in prison. The first time they held their little boy, he was born in prison. And they're doing everything that Jesus says, inasmuch as you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. That's the reason, that's the why that I hope you'll consider adoption, because it's an example of being the greatest in the kingdom.
That was a powerful picture, and on sad days, I look at that picture a lot, because we're getting more and more children who are literally born in prison. And these are desperate times, and these are very sad times for women, and we feel for them, and we hope that through adoption and through connection that their lives can change for themselves and for their child and for this adoption going forward. You know, when you open up your heart to adoption, it is a scary thing, but all of our families at the end of it will say, I wish every Christian would adopt, because it was the greatest walk in faith I've ever done in my life. And it is. Adoption is nothing but faith. It is jumping off of a ledge. Now, we're here to help you through that journey. There's no guarantees in any of it, but if you don't do it, what happens? We have a sweet friend that they decided that they wanted to adopt, and they got their home study done, they got their profile, they got their application in. And we're seeing this over and over, where women will go into an adoption agency or to an attorney and say, if I don't find a family that I would like to adopt my child, I have a scheduled abortion on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. And we all gulp. And we all want to just throw her everything. And the ones that connect, and we have some footage we'll show you here of a family who found out that they had just been matched. But the real excitement of this story is that had this family not done the work and gotten their home study done, gotten their profile done, gotten their application in, the child that they eventually adopted would not be. This is such an application of what we're told in the New Testament about being prepared, having your lamps trimmed, ready to go, so that you can partake in this wonderful. Where some people will see the pictures that sometimes we post of our children, and they'll private message me, okay, I want that baby. No, that's not what we're doing here. We're saving children's lives through adoption. People think that it's a baby party, And the deeper you go into it and the deeper you see the dark side of where these children could have been or would be, everyone needs to adopt or help finance adoption or be an encourager of adoption and hold a hand and pray for someone who's trying to adopt, because these children need our help. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is Proverbs 31, 8-9, who says, "Speak up for those who have no voice." These children have no voice. The unborn has no voice, and boy, don't we see that on the news today. And we feel that adoption is another option to that. We are pro-life. We are anti-abortion. But boy, are we pro-adoption. And what you're thinking about doing, and if you're just at the thinking stage, welcome. And we're glad you're wanting to talk with us about it. Or if you're thinking, this is what I want to do, we want you to know that you're being surrounded by encouragers. There are people all across the country who will grab my hand at fundraisers and say, what can I do to help? I don't have any more money. And I say, pray. Pray first for the birth mothers that they choose life, and then pray for the families. So I want you to feel those prayers of people all across America who are praying for you on your journey to help save a child. Now, one of the fun parts of when you adopt, I don't know why it is, but you're in North Carolina and your baby's born in Texas, and the family that's from Texas, their baby's born in North Carolina. I don't know. But this I do know. When you go on this journey, Sacred Selections only pays for airfare for international travel. We feel like there are connections that you can get points or whatever to travel domestically, but we help you find a host family that's a Christian family that will take care of you during this time. And one of the longest host families for us are Tom and Susan Leach. And they not only have been hosting for several years in a cottage that they built for their parents as they aged, and they've gone on and passed to their reward. So I knew they had this cottage. So when we started getting more and more families and agencies, now we're working with 5 different agencies in Arizona. So that's why all these babies are from Arizona. And I called them one day and I said, that cottage you have you ever considered, could you host a family? And Tom said, what does that mean? And I said, just can they stay there while they're going through this? And anybody who knows Tom and Susan, beautiful land, sheep, trees, hammocks, swings, a barn, all of the magical things that a new family bonding together would really enjoy. And they said, sure. And that was the first, and I think they're in the 30s now of families that they've hosted. Well, last year we went to visit them, and they sat us down and they said, we want to tell you something. And I said, what? They said, we're selling the house. And I went, no, we need your cottage. You can't. And he said, well, I want to show you something. And he showed me this picture that you're seeing now of their new cottage. And it brings us to tears, the faith and the love that this couple has. They're building their last home for themselves, and on the land, they're building a Sacred Selections cottage just to host the families and extended families who come and make that travel to Arizona to adopt a little innocent soul. They have been touched by the strength and the faith of these families, and so they didn't want that to stop just because they were moving for their last home. And so we honor them. And we love you, Tom and Susan, along with all the many, many, many families all across America who I can just recently, all I have to do is put a call out to a church. Do you have somebody? Yes, yes, yes. And recently we had 4 different families vying to be the one, well, we've got an extra bedroom. And the other one said, well, we've got an empty basement. And well, we've got an empty basement with a refrigerator and a sink in it. It's just been wonderful to see people want to step up and help these totally strangers. But are they strangers? We're all brothers and sisters in Christ, aren't we? And they walk away from that, and so many families have told us afterwards, help financially with the adoption was wonderful, but oh oh my, getting to meet and be connected with other Christians that I would have never known and be in their home and bond, and how wonderful it's been for Tom and Susan and Brenda and Alan and Cindy and Danny and all of, and a single mother like Judy Mankey who's brought in families to her home. There are wonderful stories that I feel are biblical stories, don't you, David? If it was modern day, these people would be in the Bible of how they open their homes to strangers to help them during a time. But the joy that they get back is in equal measure.
Yeah, like I said, it'll be it'll be a touchstone for the rest of your lives. Ups, downs, joys, highs, lows, the relationships that will grow out of your journey, friendships, fellowship, an appreciation of God's family, His providence, His answer to prayers. But you start, number one, by being prepared, and number two, by taking that step of faith, because you're not going to know where you're going. There are many people that have been there before you, and they can tell you about it. They can tell you about their journey, but for you, it'll be the first time. It'll be your journey of faith. But there are countless numbers of wonderful stories, even the ones that had drama and tragedy mixed in. But the only people that did not end up with a child in their arms are the ones that quit.
Yeah. If you stop in your journey, it doesn't happen.
So we encourage you. We're glad that you're listening. The fact that you're here, the fact that you're listening to this tells us that you've taken that very first step. We've had families who came because somebody prodded them into it. They didn't want to be at a workshop. And now they have 2 or 3 kids that they've adopted, and they're transformed people. So this is part of who we are as God's family. It doesn't happen at a congregational level. It happens because individuals in those congregations make their personal decision to put another place at their table. And when you make that decision, you will be stunned at all of the people who will support you in your walk of faith. And so we thank you for listening. We encourage you. We'll pray for you. But this is a way that you can demonstrate what Christ tells us, what it means to be the greatest in the kingdom.
And there's something else I wanted to interject, is that the Sacred Selections families are over 250 strong. They are fiercely loyal and love each other, and they have a private Sacred Selections families page. Of those families, we have 15 subset support groups that will help you. If you're interested to know, and this is before you start your adoption journey, if you want information, first-hand information from Sacred Selections families who've adopted a child addicted to heroin, a child addicted to meth, an interracial adoption, a child special needs adoption. You just go on and on and on. There are support groups within international adoptions, children adopted with RAD, which is reactive attachment disorder. There is help for you. There are people who would love to help you and use their experience to help you along the journey that maybe will diffuse some of your concerns and your fears, because I know it's scary and there's so much out there. But I'm telling you, get off the internet. Get off the internet, put your nose in the Bible, and get with people who've actually walked this journey as Christians, because it will make a difference if you hear it from their lips instead of somebody in the world who has a different opinion of adoption altogether than what Christians do. There's support for you, financial support for you. We love to help you. That's why David and I get on the planes and fly all day and night to raise money, because that at the end of it, I will tell you a little secret that I found out that I think is probably true for you in your journey. Every time we pack to go, I don't want to go, okay? I love my home. I love all of that. I would just be a homebody. But God has shown me over and over again, the harder it is to pack, the worse it is that I don't want to leave for XYZ reason, the better the reward is out there. And the first time I was having problems like that, David reminded me and he said, there's somebody out there who needs to talk with you, whether it's a birth mother, a child in distress, or a family. So just come on, let's go. And so I would encourage you to understand that. And I think that that's biblical too. If everything is easy that we do in life, where's the glory to God? But when it's hardest, and when our adoptions are the hardest, or when it's harder to get on a plane and travel, or when all of these things, that's when God is the most glorified. It's in, what's the mathematical equation for that, for risk reward?
I don't know.
Come on, you're the math guy. But here's the thing, the harder it is, the greater the glory to God, the greater reward for your soul as far as how you feel about your journey. So don't be afraid. Come on board this train with us. We're moving down the track, and we'd love for you to be a part of us. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.